Assalamualaikum and a good day to all. I will continue today's symposium with a topic that has been tasked to me on a feeding in acute pancreatitis. Acute pancreatitis is the commonest acute gastrointestinal disease requiring hospital admission. Management of acute pancreatitis differs according to its severity. Approximately 75 to 80% of patients with acute pancreatitis have mild disease with a mortality rate less than 1%. The mortality increases up to 20% if the disease progresses to a severe form of necrotizing pancreatitis, and in most severe cases, the mortality can increase up to 30 to 40%. A little bit of pathophysiology of acute pancreatitis. Acute pancreatitis is associated with early activation of proteolytic enzymes such as trypsinogen and proteolysis inside the pancreatic cell, resulting in self-digestion of the cellular content due to proteolysis and extensive destruction of the pancreatic tissue. The morphological changes including edema, parenchymatous hemorrhage in the pancreas and the intestine, and necrosis of the peripancreatic fat and parenchymatous necrosis of the pancreatic tissue. Although in the beginning acute pancreatitis is at least a local non-specific inflammatory reaction, extensive tissue damage due to the production of the hydrolytic enzyme, toxin and cytokine may cause systemic activation of the inflammation and the appearance of cells with the hypermetabolism and negative nitrogen balance. So the metabolic status is similar to the observed in sepsis and is characterized by hyperdynamic condition, hypermetabolism, and hypercatabolism. If you all ever heard about the concept of pancreatic rest concept in management of acute pancreatitis, this concept states that the enteral nutrition should only be started when abdominal pain has completely resolved and the pancreatic enzyme has normalized. So traditionally, management of acute pancreatitis includes keeping the patient nil by mouth for a few days, and oral nutrition is gradually introduced from clear fluid to a solid to soft solid based on patient tolerance. It was believed that nutrition delivered to the GI tract proximal to the jejunal will stimulate the pancreatic enzyme secretion. Thus, in acute pancreatitis, it was believed that this may lead to increased pancreatic ileal digestion and lead to the worsening of the pancreatitis. As the result, the concept of pancreatic rest has formally been used to guide the management of acute pancreatitis in 1970s. Based on this concept, strategies as used to minimize the pancreatic stimulation, such as parenteral nutrition, elemental formulation, and as I mentioned in the beginning, a stepwise introduction of the oral diet, beginning with the clear fluids. However, this concept is based on only physiological assumption and is not supported by good scientific evidence, and indeed may result in worsening of the nutritional status and poor outcome. A meta-analysis of the clinical trial revealed that the enteral nutrition is superior to parenteral nutrition in acute pancreatitis in terms of associated complication and cost. Further studies have found that the pancreatic enzyme secretion is significantly reduced in acute pancreatitis. Thus, the secretion was inversely related to the severity of the pancreatitis. So since 1990, several RCTs and meta-analysis has demonstrated the safety and the benefit of enteral nutrition in terms of mortality, multi-organ failure, infection, complication, and surgical intervention. Evidence support that enteral nutrition to stimulate and maintain gut function in opposed to pancreatic rest concept. So the enteral nutrition actually help to maintain the gut integrity, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and the gut microbiota composition. Thus, it will result in a reduced bacterial, endotoxin, and pancreatic enzyme translocation, which may attenuate the systemic inflammation, multi-organ failure, and disease severity in acute pancreatitis. Since acute pancreatitis has a vast spectrum of disease severity, the approach to nutritional management is different between mild diseases, self-limited, and compared to severe fulminant pancreatitis. So it is very useful to evaluate the disease severity before we decide on what's the plan for the nutritional treatment for each individualized patient. Some patients may have pre-existing malnutrition, which is usually found in at least 30% of the cases at the time of the initial attack. So we should consider inpatient evaluation and nutritional support according to the severity of the diseases and the patient nutritional status itself, representation, and at the same time we have to be able to identify the risk group that require special nutrition. So nutrition in acute pancreatitis, as I mentioned in the beginning, 75 to 85% of acute pancreatitis is usually reported as mild. So it's usually associated with transient, self-limiting, and therefore specialized nutrition intervention is generally not required. So in this type of patient, the oral intake usually can be resumed once the symptom improve within just a few days, and then the stepwise introduction of diet is really unnecessary. So even the randomized control trial comparing a clear liquid diet and a solid diet in mild pancreatitis, the initiating the oral feeding with a solid diet was safe, well tolerated, and could decrease the length of hospital stay compared to initiating with a liquid diet. So how about the nutrition in a severe pancreatitis? So it's been well documented now the benefit of the nutrition in severe pancreatitis. So the following aspects should be considered in this group of patients before we initiate the nutrition support. The first one is the nutritional requirement of each of the patient, and we need to decide what's the root of the nutritional support, and then after that any role of the nutritional supplements such as immunonutrition or probiotic in associated patient. But in terms of nutritional requirement, the energy requirement should be estimated with indirect calorimetry, if possible and if available. If it's not available, we usually use about predictive equation of 25 kilocalorie per kilogram per day as the energy goal. Indirect calorimetry is a gold standard to determine the energy expenditure, and thus the indirect calorimetry measurement may help to prevent over or underfeeding in the selected patient. So energy requirement, whether by indirect calorimetry or predictive equation, should be re-evaluated more than once a week in order to reach appropriate energy balance in the initial presentation. So the estimated protein requirement are higher, usually in the compared to the healthy individual. So we usually targeted around 1.2 to 1.5 kilogram per kilogram per day. This may help to improve the nitrogen's balance and is related to the decrease in 28 days mortality in critically ill patient. Daily dose of multivitamin and trace element is recommended, especially in patients receiving total parenteral nutrition. Other micronutrients should be supplemented in patients with confirmed or suspected deficiency. Then we decided what route should be considered in this type of patient. So in general, enteral feeding should be considered as the preferred route of nutritional support. 2018 meta-analysis of 5 randomized control trial involving 348 patients demonstrated that enteral nutrition, when compared to parenteral nutrition, was associated with a significant reduction in death with a risk ratio of 0.36 and multiple organ failure with a risk ratio of 0.39. This benefit was confirmed in another meta-analysis of 11 studies, including 562 patients. The results show that enteral nutrition significantly decreased mortality rate, the risk of complication, and mean length of hospital stay. This is just a several studies to show you that when they're comparing the benefit of enteral feeding versus parenteral feeding in acute pancreatitis patient. Many studies have shown advantages of the early enteral feeding and severe pancreatitis. So enteral nutrition should be initiated after adequate resuscitation and a stable hemodynamic status. Meta-analysis illustrated that early enteral nutrition within 48 hours of admission was associated with significant reduction in mortality infectious complication, multi-organ failure, surgical intervention, then the length of hospitalization. In patients who require tube feeding, continuous feeding is recommended over bolus feeding due to better feeding tolerance and fewer interruption of enteral nutrition delivery due to elevated residual and vomiting were found in continuous infusion compared with bolus group. So, parenteral nutrition is indicated when patient cannot tolerate enteral nutrition or who, even when was given enteral nutrition, are unable to tolerate targeted nutritional requirement with enteral nutrition. In severe pancreatitis, some patients may develop type 1 or type 2 intestinal failure from systemic complication of sepsis or local complications such as prolonged ileus and duodenal obstruction from pancreatic edema or cirrhosis. So, when it comes to choosing which type of feeding that we wanted to give, whether through the gastric or through the jejunum, whether it's nasogastric or whether it's a nasojejunal feeding, traditionally it is believed that the small bowel feeding was associated with the less pancreatic stimulation and auto-digestion. So meta-analysis found that nasogastric feeding was not inferior to the nasojejunal feeding in terms of exacerbation of pain, aspiration, meeting energy balance, and mortality. Initiating enteral nutrition in the stomach is technically easier, cheaper, and may reduce the time to start the enteral nutrition, while nasojejunal feeding generally requires special technique and takes more time for tube placement. So for this reason, nasogastric tube may be used as a first-line therapy in order to achieve benefit of the early enteral nutrition in patients with severe pancreatitis. So jejunal feeding should be considered in patients who cannot tolerate the gastric feeding. So it may be necessary in those with severe gastroparesis or the one with a partial gastric outlet obstruction, either from pancreatic edema or cirrhosis. Sometimes if the patient were undergoing surgery for other indication, intraoperative feeding jejunostomy may be placed for post-operative feeding. It's just showing you the diagram of a different X-ray diagram of different placement of the tip of the tube. The first diagram on the left shows that the tip of the NG tube is within the stomach. If you compare to the one on the right, you can see the tip is longer beyond the duodenum and into the proximal jejunum. So whether it make any difference whether we want to give a polymeric or semi-elemental or elemental formula. The elemental and semi-elemental formula are thought to induce less pancreatic stimulation, require less digestion, and readily absorb into the small intestine. In studies that evaluate the clinical benefit of early enteral nutrition in acute pancreatitis, both types of formulas were proven to be feasible, safe, and well tolerated. In a recent meta-analysis including 15 trials, showed no evidence to support the use of specific enteral formula in acute pancreatitis. So when do we introduce oral intake in patient post-acute pancreatitis? So oral feeding shall be offered as soon as clinically tolerated and independent of serum lipase concentration in patients with mild acute pancreatitis. So oral feeding in severe acute pancreatitis can be actively attempted once if present gastric outlet obstruction has resolved, given that it does not result in pain and complications are under control. Inpatient with tube feeding can therefore gradually reduce as oral intake improves. How about the role of the immunonutrition? Here we will discuss about the role of glutamine. A meta-analysis of 10 RCTs including 433 patients with severe acute pancreatitis revealed a significant decrease in incidence of infectious complication or mortality in the patient group with glutamine-enriched nutrition. Thus, the recent ESPEN recommendation said that when enteral nutrition is not feasible or contraindicated and parenteral glutamine should be supplemented at 0.2 gram per kilogram per day of L-glutamine. Otherwise, there is no role of immunonutrition in severe pancreatitis. So how about the probiotic use in severe pancreatitis? A meta-analysis of 6 RCTs, including 536 patients on pancreatic infection rate, overall infection rate, or operation rate, length of hospital stay, and mortality. Thus, with that, probiotic cannot be recommended in patients with severe pancreatitis. So, take-home messages that I wanted to ensure today is acute pancreatitis is a disease where the disease-specific treatment remain obscure and supportive care, including nutritional intervention, are crucial. So even though most mild disease does not require any nutritional intervention, in severe acute pancreatitis, enteral nutrition should be the initial method of feeding in the absence of contraindication. So the gastric and jejunal feeding are equally effective. Polymeric formula is safe, inexpensive, and well tolerated compared to semi-elemental or elemental formula. So parenteral nutrition should only be initiated in patients who cannot tolerate enteral nutrition. Intravenous glutamine as supplementation can be administered in patients with total parenteral nutrition, as it may lead to the positive outcome. With that, I thank you. I will